Okay, I think we can safely get started now. So, good morning, everybody. You're very welcome to today's fireside chat from the France Ireland Chamber of Commerce. For those of you who may not yet know me, my name is Áine Murray, and I'm currently serving as the president of the France Ireland Chamber. And this fireside chat series happens once a quarter, and it's the third edition this morning, and we use it as an opportunity to get to know the CEO of one of our patron members. And I'm very kindly joined today by Martin Dempsey, who is a country lead and head of vaccines for Sanofi here in Ireland. Martin, you're very welcome.
Thanks, Áine, and good morning, everybody.
So, Martin, this is a fireside chat, so we now have to imagine ourselves in very comfortable armchairs with probably a coffee in hand, considering the time of morning, rather than anything else, and just settle in for a chat. And I suppose I'll start with, obviously, Sanofi is very much a household name in the pharma and well known in the pharmaceutical industry, but people might not know exactly its presence in Ireland. So maybe you could just start with giving a short overview of the company itself and Sanofi's presence in Ireland.
Yeah, I think to put the organisation in context, Áine, it's over 100 years old, French-based company. And like most pharmaceutical companies that we see nowadays, the global leaders, it started as a small company, and down through the years with acquisitions and mergers, it's built itself into one of the top 10 companies worldwide in terms of healthcare. It's a research-based company, French-based, with a presence in 90 plus countries and over 90,000 employees. And it operates, in many different therapeutic areas, the key areas being, which your guests will be familiar with, I'm sure: immunology, oncology, rare disease, blood disorders, neurology, vaccines, diabetes, and many others as well. So it has a big footprint in terms of treating patients, both globally, but here in Ireland as well. From an Irish perspective, it's about 50 years, just over 50 years in existence. We have a significant footprint in Ireland now. We have a major manufacturing plant based in Waterford with 1,200 plus people employed there. And then we have the commercial piece of the business, which I lead from a vaccines perspective, and then as country lead from a Sanofi perspective, about 45 people based in City West in Dublin. So that's sort of in context what Sanofi is. And I think the key vision for the organization is turning the impossible into the possible by discovering, developing, and delivering medicines millions of people around the world, and vaccines millions of people around the world. So, we're very, very focused on making sure people get access to our life-saving medicines and vaccines.
That's very impressive, and I hadn't realised how long it actually Sanofi is in Ireland. Now, just to maybe it's linking in from something you just said there, and it potentially links into the next question, is you mentioned about the commercial aspect of the organisation, and I know your own role, you said it's to do with the head of vaccines for that. So maybe you could just expand on what that commercial aspect means, and maybe describe your own role, because you do have two roles, don't you? So it's quite a complex act in itself.
And it's a danger giving someone two roles. They may not do either very well, but yeah, I mean, the commercial structure in Ireland is very much around business units. So what we would have is 3 business units, one in specialty care, and some of those products that I mentioned, like immunology, oncology, rare disease, would fit in within specialty care. You have a general medicines division, which looks at a broad spectrum of medicines in many different therapeutic areas, and has a significant impact in terms of the number of people it reaches in Ireland in terms of supporting them in their health. And then you have the vaccines division, which is very much focused on prevention, as we know. I lead the vaccine division from a commercial, make sure we get our commercial goals, launch products into the market in a timely fashion, making sure that people get access to vaccines that have an impact. And then the country lead position is really a governance, legal. I support the other business units in terms of making sure they hit their strategic goals and their commercial objectives as well, in terms of supporting them. And there's a big piece around the external environment. As country lead, you represent the organisation with trade associations in negotiations and discussions with Department of Health and other stakeholders. So that's the two roles. Both very important. That's the way we're structured. Some companies are structured similarly in terms of pharmaceutical companies. Others have the straight general manager who reports into Europe or the UK and business units under that. So it's a very focused structure. It allows people to focus in on the key areas and priorities around their business units to make sure they deliver on the commercial goals.
Okay, very good, thank you. And then, how did you manage to find yourself or come to be in that role then? Where should we start?
Well, if I start back at the very beginning, I'm 35 years this year in the pharmaceutical industry. Yeah. It's not something I planned for when I was in school. I almost fell into it. I started as a nurse back in the early to mid 80s. And then I suppose at that stage, a lot of people from a nursing background were moving into the pharmaceutical industry. Okay. And so I sort of followed suit, joined the industry in 1989 in sales. And, similarly to most patterns, I think that a lot of individuals who entered the pharmaceutical industry went from sort of GP, primary care sales to secondary care, working with consultants and key stakeholders, moving into sales and marketing management, and then developing as I moved along into different roles with different organizations. I've worked with both small to medium organizations and large multinational organizations. And I suppose if I look back, and I suppose you do reflect sometimes when you have this kind of an event, I probably had a reset in early 2000s, 2002, 2003. I had been traveling quite a lot. I had a young family, and I probably thought, is this what I want to do for the rest of my career in terms of that travel, or do I want to spend more time with family, friends, and have that kind of lifestyle? So I moved away at that stage from big pharma and joined a joint venture, which was Sanofi vaccines and Merck MSD vaccines. That was a joint venture between the two major organizations. It was for Western Europe. It was small, agile, very flexible. And I think that culture suited me too, Áine, when I went into it. And it was public health, it was prevention. And right from that, I fell in love with it, really. I'd found my ideal job. And over the years, I worked as general manager in that, doing both the general manager role in Ireland, but also doing global project roles as well from Ireland, which gave me a lot of experience in what was happening in Europe, global markets, how access to medicines, how they managed in terms of their healthcare systems. And that in 2016, the end of 2016, both companies decided to end that joint venture, which had run from 1993, which is very unusual that joint ventures, particularly in the pharmaceutical industry, usually have an 8 to 9 year lifespan. But both parties decided at the end of 2016 to bring the vaccines back into the mothership as such. And I joined Sanofi, leading up the vaccine division. Again, it was very different because you'd moved from a smaller, more entrepreneurial organization back into a major pharmaceutical company. But I really liked the culture. When I came back in, I liked the vision of the organization. It allowed me some flexibility then to take on projects outside of Ireland in terms of the vaccine division, around business intelligence, around market access, and building, I suppose, and shaping the environment for procurement for vaccines. And then in 2019, I think it was 2008, 2019, the previous incumbent of the country lead position was leaving the organization to retire. And I got the role, and that's how it sort of came about. And I've been doing it for the last 3-4 years.
Wow. Very impressive. I'll just, before I continue, something I forgot to state at the start, everybody, is if you have any questions at any stage, please feel free to include them in the chat. We will try and leave a few minutes at the end to address any questions. I think obviously when you talk about when you chose Sanofi and the joint venture, that obviously that aspect of prevention really appealed, I suppose, to what prompted you maybe to join into nursing in the first place. Is that aspect of doing better and helping others, seems to me, is it?
Well, I wouldn't like to put myself on a high chair. I suppose I had a brother who was older than me and a sister who had started their careers in nursing, and I think that influences you as well in terms of your career decision makers. How many people do we see, who come from medicine? There are parents in medicine that they go into medicine, so I think that influenced me. I went into psychiatry, which was fascinating, and allowed me to develop skills probably at a younger age that I wouldn't have had, because I suppose at that age I thought I knew everything, and I suppose it taught you to listen, particularly in mental health. And it's a skill that I suppose that helped me in developing my career as I moved on. And again, in reflection, that I was just thinking this morning, in the 35 years, I've had 16 bosses in my career. So there's nearly one every 2 years. So I suppose that listening and managing upwards has always helped me from those nursing days. So, and that's how I suppose I got started in it. And again, looking at people around me, how they were developing their careers, why they were leaving nursing. And many did, many didn't, by the way, either. And went on to have very fruitful and fulfilled careers within nursing. And I suppose if I'd have stayed in nursing, Áine, I probably could have been retired by now. But I took the decision to try out, and I suppose at that stage it had opened my mind as well.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can come from a small country area where that's your global world, where you move out and you start to see other people and see people develop their careers. Probably helped me, and I was fortunate with mentors that I had at that stage too.
Yeah. Something you mentioned as well, and I'm wondering if those skills probably helped with that as well. You mentioned that you had international and global roles based from Ireland, from I think quite early on compared to a lot of other organizations where you wouldn't have seen that. Normally you'd have to move to the headquarter country to have those international roles. I find that very interesting.
I when you look at a lot of them were project led. So it allowed you to sort of do, so for example, we would have, the one on business intelligence that I took in 2017 to 18. That was an organization that had taken back into the main company a different organization in terms of 19 countries in Western Europe. And people had a lot of information, but weren't shaping that information back in so people could understand what was happening in other countries. Now, there was a lot of travel with it, Áine, but it was my view to do it from Ireland.
Yeah.
We had good access to all European cities, both Eastern and Western Europe. It was building a network of people around Europe that were responsible for gathering that business intelligence and then finding a way that we could communicate that globally. And I mean, initially it started with Europe, and then it developed into Asia, China, Japan, and other parts of the world in terms of, because what it was doing was allowing us to understand our own business, but how the competition were operating as well. That all that information was there, but it was just finding a way of who was responsible and how best to share that.
Yeah, and I think it's an ongoing challenge, I think, for many organizations, and it probably evolves over time because the world continues to change and organizations and industries continue to change as well. And obviously the pharmaceutical industry has changed considerably during your career.
Yeah, and you sometimes, I think the point of that is that sometimes people feel information is power, and they don't want to share sometimes. But I suppose bringing people along that pathway to show the importance, of information sharing. And it's not just business intelligence, it's right through everything. It's sharing best practice, sharing ideas, collaborating together. And all it does is put you in a better position to achieve what goals you have, not just as an individual country, but as a group.
I often think that the people who are doing the best practice don't often recognize it as best practice because they're just, as far as they're concerned, they're just doing their job and doing what's expected of them. And then that nearly is the hardest way to unearth the best practice sometimes.
It's a bit like the Irish rugby team right now. They're just doing what they do. And you know, so sometimes, you know, when you have it, you don't realize you have it.
Yeah, exactly. And then I suppose when you have it, not realizing what you have, there's questions that I always ask in these series. And first one is, what is the most challenging aspect of your role?
Well, we just touched on it. I mean, the environment is changing rapidly. I mean, particularly in the medical space. Governments, not just in Ireland, but right across the world, are becoming more conscious on spend and budget spend. So really now we have innovation that companies are taking huge risks at in small unmet need areas. And access is much more difficult. So the huge challenge was not just in Ireland, but I mean, I think globally right now is that if you look at the investment and the time to market for life-saving products, innovative products, and only 1 out of 10 get from start to finish. You know, that access piece is becoming critically important. That's the challenge, is finding space within the current budget for innovation. How do we best manage that? And being fair to the payer as well is, you know, it's not just, you know, a blank check. They have to manage budgets. They want to make access available for the best medicines for patients. Right now, we're a bit slower than a lot of European colleagues, but that's the challenge. That's the challenge, because when you know you have a product that can make a significant impact on someone's life, or even sometimes life-saving, having to be able to see those people not being able to get access, it's very difficult.
Yeah, and I think that's where obviously the different kind of multi-stakeholder, multi-party collaborations and sharing once again of that knowledge and methods come into play to help.
I think, you know, everyone on this call, if we look back to just a couple of years ago with COVID, when you looked at when governments, industry, stakeholders collaborated and got together, how quickly we could get vaccines in that stage to marketplace. If you look at right now, normally, you know, that period from sort of discovering and developing and then putting it to clinical trials, and there can be a failure at any endpoint, and all your investment is gone. And then for those products that come through, you're 8 or 9 years into the process. Your patency runs out very quickly, you know. So even to recoup those investments, and I think, you know, that's the challenge for all of us in the pharmaceutical industry, not just in Ireland, but globally right now, because it's unlike, I suppose, what we've seen in the past. We're looking at those small unmet needs now, and you are going to see medicines at higher cost than previous medicines that promote global populations or bigger populations. So it is a challenge. Yeah.
So then we've talked about the challenge. I suppose conversely, then it's only fair to ask you, what are you most excited about in your role?
I suppose facing those challenges exciting. I think I said it earlier on. I think I'm very fortunate to be in an industry that if you do make progress, that you know that you're making a difference to people's lives. I think the team that we have in Ireland here are exceptional. So it's the people. And none of the team that work for us in the Irish affiliate, actually, if you look at their job description or their job title, doesn't entail exactly what they do. So, you know, that excites me. We have a lot of young people coming into the organization, and I suppose trying to give them the space to develop their careers and start to believe in themselves. That potentially, you know, they can gain roles within the organization very senior. I think I've mentioned this to you before, is that right now, the head of Sanofi manufacturing worldwide is Irish. The head of the supply chain worldwide is Irish. And I think if we look at those as role models for the younger people coming into the organization, part of my role is to make sure the culture the team spirit, the collaboration is there. And I suppose that excites me to see people advancing and improving their careers.
Yeah, I think that's that kind of expectation, I think, of Irish people now is very different to say when I was growing up. I know you mentioned the rugby teams earlier, and I know when I was watching rugby matches when I was younger, we certainly were not going in expecting to win matches, whereas my children now, they turn around and they fully expect the Irish team to win every match that they look at.
Yeah, and I mean, from the generation I come from, I think, when I look back, it was almost, I wouldn't be able to do that job, or there's someone better to do that job. I think that culture is gladly changed, that people start to believe in themselves much more. But I think it's important to, I mean, even to where I am today within the Irish organisation, I've been lucky. You need that piece of luck as well. You need to be in the right place at the right time. And you need someone within the organisation to go to bat for you. So I would always say to the younger people, have a mentor, have a coach, have someone outside of the business to guide. Don't be afraid to speak up. And I think, within organizations before, I mean, and I've worked in organizations that were very autocratic. I think we're seeing that change now. And certainly within Sanofi, it's about a speak up. It's about a play to win attitude. It's about those behaviors that make a difference. And I think if people, no matter where they come from, if they portray those behaviors, if they have that belief, if they're, a bit of humility as well, that they can go a long way. And why can't they lead organizations? I mean, we see it worldwide, and many Irish people now leading big organizations.
Yeah, no, it's very true. And I think something you mentioned to me before as well is that even like when you say there about mentors, I know it's something that we in my own organization, we'd always advocate as well, because it's so important to have that other perspective of you than you have yourself. And I know we were mentioning even the pharma industry when looking at Ireland, it rates the Irish people very highly, doesn't it, when it's selecting locations?
If you look at it from a manufacturing perspective, we have 19 of the top 20 pharmaceutical companies in the world with a footprint in Ireland, which is incredible. I mean, the impact it has on the country is significant. Some of that, people will say it's for tax purposes, and may well be right. But there's also the pool of talent, the pool of people in the country, well educated. I think sometimes we can get carried away. We're better educated in other countries, we're not. But I think, we're seeing people now with much more belief in their ability, and that's good. And most young people that I would deal with, I mentor some people, it's a different mindset they have now maybe than I did 20, 25 years ago, which is brilliant.
Fantastic. I might get you to change your microphone there for a second. It's just you're coming through clearly still, but it sounded like it was starting to change there.
Is that better?
That is better, yes. Thank you. And then there's a final question before we finish up and see if there's any questions come in. The final question I'd like to ask is, what is the one thing you know now that you wish you had known 5 years ago?
There's many things that I wish I'd known that 5 years ago. I thought hard about this question. Sometimes I don't like to look back. I think things happen sometimes for a reason. I think COVID changed all of our lives in that period. And in many ways, catastrophically for lots of people, in terms of being able to engage, people dying during that period, whether it was from COVID or other diseases, not being able to. But I think in other ways too, it gave us a reset, about our own lives, what's important. I mean, the amount of travel, the amount of time in the office, time out. So I think the pieces that I take from it is that, would we have done that, or would we have operated like that without COVID? Probably not. I think it has done a lot in terms, of staff retention with some people, in terms of the flexibility to be able to operate both ways. I think the piece we're missing on is the collaboration, and how do you best manage that going forward. I think the piece where, where it was office space before, you could pick up a cup of coffee, knock on someone's door, sit down, discuss. I think we need to get back to more of that. But how best we do that in terms of still having that flexibility is a challenge. But I think for me is that, you know, clearly it shows us that we need to prepare for anything. And, you know, who would have seen what has happened with COVID? You know, have we come out of it stronger? In lots of ways, I think so, as a country. And I think, you know, it's finding the best model going forward from a commercial perspective to make sure we have the collaboration, we have that opportunity to challenge each other. And also at the same time, that flexibility for people that it can have a balanced lifestyle. Because I think people, I mean, if you look at sport, people usually who are happy, who are contented, who are balanced, usually perform best. People under stress, often you see that, particularly from a sporting perspective, they don't perform their best when they have all those other things. So it's getting the balance right, Áine, I think is critically important.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with you. And I think we've even seen that in a lot of the chamber working groups as well. The various questions that come up on the events that we're asked to hold tend to focus on that idea of cultivating that most sustainable culture for talent within organizations for best performance. And it is a struggle, that balance between that flexibility, but that cultural, physical connection piece that people are now lacking. Because I think the strong cultures have held us through. But as you said, like, how can a team work well if half of them are there on a Tuesday and half of them are there on a Thursday? And how do you sustain that?
And that's the challenge. That's the challenge. You know, it's trying to manage that, to get the best from everyone. But it is going to be a challenge.
Yeah. And that's a very, I think, a good point of reflection to leave our chat on. Now, I think you're quite fortunate in that no questions, but well wishes have come in, and many thanks for your insights into the pharma world have come in. We just have 1 minute left. So if there are any questions that start to come in, what we'll do is Martin and I will take those away and we can follow up on those directly with anyone afterwards. But otherwise, Martin, thank you so much for sitting beside me, beside the fire today, and joining in our fireside chat. And thank you all for joining us, and I hope you all enjoyed it.
Thanks, Áine. Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.